Welcome to Divisive Issues, a comic book podcast where we talk about comic books and sometimes manga, like this time. I'm Ryan.
Well, manga is comics, Ryan.
Yeah,
it's just from another area of the world.
I know, but I don't want to.
Oh, didn't you guys mean manga?
I don't want to offend the weebs, right, guys?
Hey, that's offensive.
Okay.
Yeah, we have two weeaboos right here.
Wait,
Ryan.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Sly.
I'm Phil.
I'm Darryl-San.
I think you can guess who half those weeaboos are.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm Stefan. They always prefer their last names first.
Stefanson.
Stefan Kun.
Yeah, you guys aren't close enough to use my first name yet.
Yeah. So the only real lore, I guess, is what's manga.
Well, the person should be giving the lore this week. Last time we had Ryan give the lore. This week, let's have Daryl give the lore on our three creators.
Thanks for putting me on the spot, because I actually did not research this well enough.
Well, you gave me like, oh, I know this. I want to show the progression of this and that. I want to talk about like, how these writers influence each other.
But I needed to clarify, I'm not good with lore. Like, I read up on this stuff, and then I don't retain it. I'm just like, I should do this.
I mean, that's fine. Tell us what these things are.
Yeah, say what you know. End of episode.
Okay, so what's the first book that we're talking about, Daryl?
So we have three different mangakas, which are manga artists today.
Two different otakus.
I don't know any of these words, listeners, so I'm just as confused as you are.
You baka gaijin, damn it, Ryan.
Mangakas are just like comic artists.
Okay.
They have to be special snowflakes and have their own term, just like comics in Japan can't be called comic, they be called manga. And you can't call them comic creators, you have to call them manga.
And you can't call it playing, you have to call it kikaku.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think that's fine having a different language have different words for things.
Our three that we have today are Kazuo Umezu, Hideshi Hino, and Junji Ito. And
you said these are all these three different eras, like not eras, but like each one influenced the other one after another?
Yeah, more or less. Like, this is why, like, I wish I'm looking for their years that they were together. Or, like,
I assumed you knew this stuff better than you did. That's why didn't look it up myself.
This is why I don't do lore.
I mean, we don't always have to be like lore. We could talk about the books as they stand.
Because we didn't know much about the artists behind them ourselves, any of us.
Well, I assumed, foolishly, that we had an expert on our hands, but clearly we don't.
Last time we assumed that, it was another Stefan, and she didn't know as much about Archie as we thought she did, too.
and then Daryl turns around and says, why is our house considered inferior to the other houses? But this is why.
You bring shame to the Stefan family.
So, okay, we'll pretend to be classic schmastic for a week and look at things as they stand on their own instead of in these giant woven tapestries of lore.
Well, these are all short stories anyway, so maybe it's appropriate to look at them as they are.
Oh, we forgot to mention it at the top of the show. This is part of our Spooky October block.
Yeah, we forgot to mention it, but as part of Spooky October, we wanted to see what other countries did with the horror genre.
Are you sure you're pronouncing that right? I thought it was spoopy.
Two spoopy.
Too spoopy. Oh, shit.
So our first story is The Stolen Heart.
And this is done by Kazuo Umezu.
Yeah, and he does all the writing and the art.
Yeah.
The cover says The Stolen Heart, and the heart is like super, super detailed and realistic. And then there's like a manga girl, very kind of. I don't know a lot about manga, so I don't want to say like standard.
The important thing to note is that his style is actually really reminiscent of like Osamu Tezuka's, where it's like it's the old style of drawing girls and guys, where it's like very simple faces, like defined noses, big black eyes.
The way I would compare it to is this reminds me a lot of Speed Racer,
Yes.
which was like a contemporary art manga of the 60s, that kind of style. The eyes look more like doll's eyes than they do now.
Yeah, again, it's like Osamu Tezuka was a big, like, he was the forerunner of a lot of that stuff.
I think that's definitely a good description.
So you can tell, like, Umezu is influenced by older style, and that's how he actually started off, is by drawing like older normal stories, and then he started getting more and more into horror as his life went on, which is kind of interesting because his horror is real crazy, and it's contrasted very oddly against like this kind of like lighthearted looking characters.
Like, it looks very innocent compared to...
Well, we see that right from the cover, because the heart is like super detailed, which you usually don't see that kind of like detailed organ work outside of like horror or a textbook. And then the girl is very Speed Racery and like more innocent. And like she's young, like schoolgirl, kind of,
Yeah.
you know.
She's
yeah.
a high schooler.
Yeah. So it opens in the Miyako High School newspaper club, where we have a lot of young girls telling scary stories to each other as their friend arrives, Amiko-san. And they're telling about the 100 Tales legend, which is if you sit around and by candlelight and you tell 100 scary stories, something scary will happen after the 100th time. Which that seems like a really long time for me.
Yeah, it really does. Like I tell like 5 ghost stories and it takes like at least an hour, if not longer.
I mean, we talk about like 3 issues and it takes us a fucking hour
Well,
and a half.
that's why no one found out what's happened at the 100th time, because everyone's like, why are we doing this?
Yeah, and they say like this must be just something that people came up with to make ghost stories even scarier. That like you have to keep an eye on how many you've told. So the girls are telling them, and then it very quickly is like, now we're up to the 99th story. So I guess the first 98 were like pretty boring.
Well, there are some like really good like 2-sentence short stories.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
Yeah, and they're like high school girls, so I assume they're not like super accomplished writers and like career storytellers. So they go to is it Amiko that tells the 99th story?
No.
She tells the last one, the
Hitomi.
final one,
Okay.
100th one.
So wait, what's the name of the narrator for the 99th story?
Hitomi.
Okay, so Hitomi.
Tits on me. That's what she's called.
So, oh, okay, I see. Hitome goes to tell the 99th story about how she was friends with Miyama Takaiko-san.
I don't think we have to see all these names if we're having trouble with them.
But there's only like 3 named characters. I want to know them.
Yeah.
So when they were little girls, they were reading stories about heart transplants, and they made a promise that if one of them had a heart disease and the other one died, they would give the heart to the other person, which seems like an extremely specific like pact to make.
Yep.
I found the story very relatable because Ryan, Phil, and Daryl all have a pee pack.
Oh, that's way different.
Yeah, people pee their pants all the time. People don't die at the same time.
Okay,
as
you have to give context. If one of us pees our pants, the other ones also have to pee their pants right away.
It just felt like this is something people do, make a pact, and then fear when they have to own up to it, which is what happens here.
I am pretty scared.
There's a difference between peeing your pants and giving you my heart, though.
Yeah.
This is more relatable, like the fear of peeing your pants versus having your heart ripped out. Like this is more relatable. You have the real heart, guys.
I guess. So immediately after, like they say just after, she starts to feel really strange.
After they sign the pact.
Yeah, after they make the pact, and she learns that she has a heart disease that's getting worse and worse.
This is the girl
This is the one telling the story.
Yeah, Hitome.
So when Takaku finds out, she gets very, very scared, and one thing that I find really interesting is as they... this I guess is a common manga thing, but usually the art's very simple, and then whenever they do close-ups, especially when she's really scared, it's like much more line heavy and much more detailed. And I thought that was really cool. I don't know how common that is.
Yeah, it's especially like prevalent in a lot of. Well, actually, it's in like everything. Whenever you do like a dramatic close-up, you add a lot more shading.
Yeah, but I guess because manga's usually, at least these examples, the art is usually like way simpler than a lot of the Western comics that I've read, that like the more detail stands out so much more in contrast.
Mm-hmm. And we should know, like, all of these are black and white, like manga's traditionally just black.
And they're read right to left.
If any Bakagaijin didn't know.
Yeah.
Me and Ryan, after Daryl said, guys, you read right to left, me and Ryan still fucked it up.
Yeah, because, I'm an idiot.
Just to be fair, Sly admitted to fucking it up earlier. Now he's retconning that. He's like, no, only Ryan fucked up.
No, I said I fucked up. Me and Ryan.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Phil just wants a bone to pick.
Yeah, mostly me.
I'll kill you, Sly.
Phil just wants the bone or whatever you just said.
Yours is a soul heart for real, Sly.
Yeah, when we were younger, actually, we made a pact that, if I ever died, I would give Sly my heart and vice versa. So I'm planning on killing him.
We should note the person that needs the heart gets the heart from the other person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it sounded like you said, if I died, I'd give Sly like my dead heart. Oh wait, that is what happens. Never mind, I'm confused. So I cut this out.
So anyway,
Takaku becomes very, very like paranoid, and everywhere she goes, she sees like car accidents and a big bag of garbage flying above her head. And she's just like wandering around, and
I think that's like a crane, like it's like cement or something.
it looks like a big bag of garbage. So she's like getting so scared that she ends up locking herself in her house, and
Because she's afraid that now that just after they signed the pact, if her friend got sick, it must mean that she's gonna die.
Yeah, she's trying to wait it out until her friend dies, basically, so she doesn't want to give her
yeah.
heart
So
out.
we immediately feel a lot of sympathy for this character.
That's one that's notable about these works. Sympathetic protagonists are not always high on the priority list.
yeah.
Well, I mean, it's like it's understandable to be freaked out if the day after you're like, hey, if I ever get a heart disease, I'm gonna take your heart when you die.
I know, but it's like I made a deal with my best friend, and as soon as I'm asked to own up to you, like shit, fuck, gotta find a way out of
Okay,
this.
if one of you guys were like, if I ever get like a kidney disease, you have to give me a kidney, and then the next day you were like, oh, by the way, I went to the doctor, turns out I have this disease, I would think that you were just fucking like catfishing. That's not the right word, but you were like pretending, you were tricking me into making this deal, and you'd be like, by the way, I have this disease.
She's also just a teenage girl. She does not want to
Yeah.
die.
That's true. That's true. So
Because everyone else, we do it by this point. 25-year-old, 30,
Yeah.
28-year-old guys. I'll die.
yeah.
Fucking
So
kill me.
I will only die if it doesn't grant Sly extended life.
Now you're gonna have to own up to it tomorrow.
yeah. So
Just of course I get caught.
Someone's gonna come up to you with a gun and be like, do you want me to kill you as long as I don't let Sly live? And you're gonna have to be like, well, that was the pact I made.
Yeah.
So
speaking of really coincidental things that lead to someone dying, she's hiding in her house. She refuses to go scared, and then
She used to get scared.
she refuses to go to school because of how scared she is.
She used to get scared, like I'm a man, not motherfucker.
She refuses to go to school because she's so scared that a truck drives right through her house, and like it knocks down the framing of the house onto her, and she's seemingly dead.
Kills her with like her eyes are stuck like wide open.
Yeah, and an onlooker who's standing outside goes, "It looks like the girl inside died instantly," as if they could tell that from across the street. And they bring her into the hospital, and the doctors say the same thing, that like it looks like she died instantly, and they say, oh, they have this note that was signed by like 13-year-old girls, and the parents consent, so they cut out her heart and give it to the, what was her name?
Hitomi.
Yeah,
Hitomi.
Hitome. So they're like on the bed next to each other, and it gets like pretty bloody.
I should, since Darryl didn't give the lore, I should give a little lore on the artist Umezu. What's the name? Umezu?
Yeah, Kazuo Umezu.
He's an artist who was known for having children in very gory positions. Like he has children die in brutal ways. That's kind of like one of his recurring themes in his books, and you can see that developing in this story.
Yeah, because like they're like these regular, they're these like regular normal looking kind of like manga girls, and then like the sound effects that they have, like when they cut out her heart and stuff, are like super gross, and like there's blood everywhere, and basically that's how the story ends, is that saying I was saved, and
Not the whole story.
Yeah.
Hitome's story as
Yeah.
part of the 100 stories.
yeah, so it cuts back to her, talking to the young girls, and she's like, so miraculously I survived without any complications or rejections or blood clots, and the more I think about it, the more awful it seems that our fates were decided by that first promise, and that ends the 99th story. And then the girl who walked in at the beginning of the story says, actually, I know about Takako-san. And they're all like, what? And she basically like recaps the beginning, that she was really scared. She wouldn't go outside. But the change that she gives is that she actually wasn't dead. She was, I guess, put in like...
he was paralyzed or something.
Yeah, she was paralyzed. And then somehow the doctors didn't notice she was alive.
Bring her in, they say her ECG has stopped and her pupils are dilated. And so a doctor says, no doubt she died instantly, but she was still alive the whole time.
And you get this like scary, like her face, her eyes are stuck wide open. She looks like obviously like terrified, and she has thought bubbles just saying, I'm not dead yet, I'm alive, help me.
Yeah.
And she's hearing them talk over her. Well, let's remove her heart and give it to Hitomi-san.
And this is when we actually see the heart removal, and it's like splurt and rip and like really detailed, really gory, like super gross.
She's thinking this whole time. She's like just screaming in her mind as her heart's being ripped out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was the best part, is that it just shows her
Yeah.
blank face with her screams as you see them like ripping arteries and veins and blood flying out of her.
Oh, it's so gross. But yeah, so they take her heart out, and she's still screaming like, help me, help me. And she basically is just like lying there screaming silently as the newcomer wraps up that story. And they're saying, so she didn't die due to fate, she was murdered by the heart transplant. And then the original girl is like, how do you know that? And the girl telling the story, Amiko, she doesn't say anything. She just stops, and they grab her arm to be like, how do you know? And she doesn't have a pulse, and she says, I know because I'm Takako. Look. And she rips open her chest, and she has like a big hole where her heart should be.
A really disgusting gaping hole with like veins and arteries. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like if there was just spaghetti falling out of this hole.
Yeah.
And then her face shifts from the
Emiko to Takako.
Yeah.
to the dead girl.
And she basically is like, well, not basically, she's literally like, Hitomi-san, give me back my heart. My heart was...
That's one thing I always do. I always say, it's basically like this when it's literally is that.
Yeah. My heart was stolen away from me. Give it back. And she's like, help, help. And the, I guess, like, zombie girl reaches in and rips her heart right out of her chest. It goes to silhouette.
Yep.
And it's, like, really, really cool. Because you see, like, the splatter. And...
She grabs the heart and then runs away going, tee.
Oh, it's really weird. And then basically, like, they turn the lights back on. And Amiko walks in.
I actually find it really funny because she's walking. She says to herself, "I was supposed to take part in Mystery Club's 100 Tales, but some urgent business came up, and now I'm late." She says it to herself.
And then at first I was like, "Wait, who is this?" And then they walk in, and she's like, "Hi guys, I'm Amiko-san. Sorry I'm late." And they're like, "You're the real one?" She's like, "What? It looks like you've seen a ghost." And then that's when she sees the body, and she's like, "Oh God!" And she rolls the body over, and we see this like. This is the first time she's shown out of silhouette. And even though we already saw a girl with her heart ripped out, we see Hitomi, and it's like even grosser.
yeah.
And so the girls like flip out and like they run and follow the trail of blood.
Only the newcomer girl follows the trail of blood.
Oh, Amiko?
Yeah.
And they follow her she follows the trail to the graveyard, and she finds the heart in front of Takako's grave.
Yep.
And it's still warm to the touch. And
they learned the heart was definitely Hitomi's. The one that was ripped out.
Yeah, it's basically how the story ends, just with a repetition of it said that when the 100th story is told, something strange will happen.
Yeah, and this... spooky, scary stuff happened.
It was pretty spooky scary. Like, I thought this was pretty cool.
I didn't think... this one I didn't find creepy as much as it was, like, gory. Like, I was like, that's... terrible. Like, that's disgusting.
I kind of like this one. It wasn't like super scary, but it was very like classic horror. Like people are telling us a horror story, and then it comes back into real life, like the story just told. Yeah. I always love stories like that where it uses a very classic setup of let's go tell scary stories, and you find out actually I'm dead, and then you murder somebody.
Yeah, it's a very traditional tale.
Yeah, and especially, I didn't know what to expect because I was like, oh, it's young girls telling scary stories. I thought it would be like a framing device for like a horror story. But then when the characters like became part of it, I just felt like it went a lot of unexpected places, especially that it was only 19 pages long.
Well, that's why that idea is always cool to me when it uses it as when a frame device, it turns out to be the story itself.
Yeah, and I know like that's, something we see all the time, but like I just thought... It was, and especially because like it was so like it's such like a traditional like I don't want to say cutesy but cutesy setting.
It's so
like,
cute when the heart gets ripped out.
No, but I mean like of like young girls in like a club after school telling like scary stories to spook each other out, and then it like gets so gory and serious. Like it just kind of caught me off guard, and I thought it was really cool. I liked it a lot.
I read a lot of stories to prepare for this because I was the one that picked out like 2 of these stories, and I was trying to find what work would fit these guys best. And Umezu is one of the craziest like authors and artists that I've read because of what he puts into his stories. Because the first thing I read was The Left Hand of God, which if like anyone knows it, you're like, oh, okay. But for those that don't know it, it's these like strange tales about this kid that has like the god and the devil in him, and they're like influencing events. And the very first story opens with scissors emerging from a girl's eyes, and it's 6 panels of like the most brutal and violent like way of picturing that, of just scissors emerging straight out of her eyes as she's sleeping.
That's one thing about Japanese horror in general. They're a lot more okay with gore than American. Like American horror now is more gory, but for a long time we were more the chiller setup, where it's more about setting up atmosphere, setting up a foggy atmosphere and stuff like that. Where Japanese horror will be like knives coming out of a girl's eyes and people ripping out hearts and stuff in brutal full page action. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it is funny just seeing his style and like what he'll do to little girls, and especially like in parts of the drifting classroom, what he does to little kids. Like he has one guy stab a kid in the back, and the kid's holding a gun, and he shoots another child, and it's like, this is just really crazy, like almost battle royale stuff, just with children instead of teenagers.
I found this pretty generic. I mean,
so you were not a big fan, Phil?
I wasn't a big fan of this one. I really like you said, we see it so much, and it's cool to see like the archetype, but I was never like excited or like interested.
I was never sexually excited.
Well, definitely not. But I was also just not like. I was like, that's interesting, but I wasn't really into it.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll fare better for our second story, Lullabies from Hell.
Yeah. By Hideshi Hino.
Do you have anything on Hideshi Hino, or are you just gonna go into this too?
God
damn you, Sly! Why are you making me do lore?
Yeah, he has some interesting backstory.
Like?
Well, now I'm just looking up a wiki.
This comic is what Daryl's gonna do to you, Sly, from putting him on the spot.
Okay, so Lullabies from Hell.
So, Daryl, do you know anything about Hidemi? What's his face?
Hideshi Hino?
Hideshi Hino?
He had a troubled childhood.
Obviously.
You can tell from the story.
This is basically like a fucking autobiography of a sociopath.
When I was reading this, for the first half, I was like, I think this guy's Daryl.
I thought the same thing. I thought the same
It's
thing.
like Daryl writing something. Like it's like I'm technically somebody else, but you can tell it's Daryl.
No, he says, "My name is Hideshi Hino" in the first line.
Yeah, I know, but that's Daryl's pen name apparently, because this guy is just Daryl.
I honestly thought the same. I thought the same thing.
Yeah, I'm like, this is like when Daryl had a square guy in Mind's Existence and that weird guy, the Russian guy in the other story, but it's really just Daryl. All these guys are just Daryl.
Anyway, this is Lullabies from Hell, and it starts with a man strung up on a crucifix with nails in him and little demons like stabbing people's heads.
It's like almost like assembly line of people's heads. They're just stabbing their daggers into their heads.
Yeah, like you said nails, but like these nails are like stakes, like giant stakes for some of them. So like the guy in the crucifix has a giant pole through the middle of his chest.
Hino's art is like really kind of simplistic.
It's cartoony. It's very
cartoony.
I found it really like disturbing.
It reminds me of like, it's not like Tim Burns exactly, but it's more like that level of abstraction, like, and distinctness and style,
especially in the way he draws faces.
Yeah, I was about
to
say,
have really exaggerated features.
Their
huge
eyes,
like
their eyes are like bugging out always.
Everyone looks like they could be Frankenstein's monster.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it starts, and it shows like this guy with like these really dark set eyes and like the creepy little dots for pupils. He says, "My name is Hideshi Hino. I am a mangaka who obsesses over bizarre and terrible things."
I'm sorry, I meant mangaka.
He explains that he lives in a city where the sunset's been ruined by all these like smokestacks that blot out the sky. The ditch in front of his house changes color every day, from blood red to pus green to yellow like bile.
It's like that river in Russia, and the Russian government's like, "Oh, that red's fine. That's a normal color for a river, right, guys?"
You know, I keep hearing you say he, but I feel like it would make more sense to a listener if you referred to yourself in the first person, Daryl.
Shut up, Ryan. So then he explains that like he collects grotesque and unique things, and he has fits every night where he cuts off his fingers and ears and stores them in a jar. He has a lot of weird pets. He's basically just saying like, I'm just a really weird guy.
It's more than it's more than weird. It's more than weird. He has
skeletons in his closet.
Yeah, he has a bunch of dead animals, and like he's cutting off his own fingers. It's more.
That's why I say he was really weird.
Yeah,
he cuts off his own fingers, but then in the next panels, he has all his fingers.
Grows them back.
Yeah, well, he's Wolverine actually. He's a plot twist.
So then he explains when he was little, he was a sickly and depressing kid, and he was interested in freakish and horror things.
I find it probably called himself a sickly depressing kid, not a sickly depressed kid, because he is depressing.
Yeah,
yeah, that is.
And
true.
this child has like the fucking bulgiest eyes I've ever seen. It's like
It's like ET kind of hair.
Yeah.
Yes. But E.T. but uglier.
Yeah.
So then he explains like his mother was demented and she has like one big eye and one little eye and she sings.
It
eerie
looks
songs
like one of her
upstairs.
eyes is trying to escape from her face.
Yeah.
and you see like the red like veins or capillaries or whatever in her eye. Like I mean they're not red. It's
Like
black and white.
everyone's got like the veins in their eyes
Yeah.
bulging almost,
And
or
she-
everyone with big eyes. And she sings a song that's like fall, fall, come fall down to the bottom of hell, sea of blood, sea of fire, mountain of needles. Can't you hear the groan of the dead?
It's kind of a shitty song.
It's probably better. it probably rhymes with something in Japanese.
It's probably better in its native Japanese.
Yeah, like everything.
Bakugaijin. You should read the subtitles, you fucking assholes.
Yeah, fucking subs not dubs, bros.
It's true.
That is true.
So
That was just like, it's true. Yes. Good point there, Brian.
she says like she hates her son. She thinks he's a devil and says, "Don't come near me." It says, "I could not nurture any affection for a mother like her." And his father wasn't any better. He was always working at a factory, so you never like got to see him. He was always distant.
One thing I just want to say, I do really like the way that narration is, because whenever I see these like kids that are neglected by their parents, it's always like, how come she couldn't show me affection? And I really like that he kind of takes the position of power in this story, where he's like, I couldn't nurture any affection for a mother like her. Like, he's not making excuses, I guess is the way I would put it. Like, he's saying like, I'm the one that keeps us distant, kind of thing. I just found that really interesting, that he takes the onus of the affection.
Yeah. And he says that his brother was a horrible Yakuza, which is like a Japanese gangster. Which, fun fact, Hideshi Hino's grandfather was an actual Yakuza.
Ah. So
And
I didn't know your family had ties to the crocodile.
So he says like the maid took care of him. It's like this ugly maid, and she despises him. So basically, like everyone just hates him that was in this
Everyone in the
house.
story's ugly. Like you just assume when you mention characters, they're ugly. Like
The brother
yeah.
looks like he's about to grow like a unicorn horn.
yeah, like has a big bump in the front of his head.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and Hideshi Hino, he says, "Is it any wonder that my interest in everything ugly and grotesque got deeper and deeper?" And he's standing next to like a rat that has two like spikes in it.
Is it rat? I thought it was a
I
dog.
thought it was a dog too.
No, it's a rat first.
It's a rat in the first panel, and then on the next page,
Oh.
he ties
okay.
up a dog. And this is when we start to really get into Hino's stuff. He ties up a dog, gets a knife out, and starts cutting open the dog, takes out its intestines, and throws it into, like, formaldehyde jar.
One thing I find interesting about the way he draws animals in pain, he doesn't draw them like we would draw them now, like being compassionate human beings. Like we would focus on their looking sad, but he draws them looking demonic the entire time as they're dying, and like
That's true.
like they show a cat being mutilated too, and he's just angry the entire time. He's not like meow, help me, fuck. He's just like rah, eat your face off. Looks
Yeah.
like.
I mean, to be fair, the humans all look demonic in this too. Like everything, this looks like an actual hellscape the entire time. Which
Yeah,
is
I
kind
just mean like you could tell like this is the way this shows people in pain is from a sociopathic point of view.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he says, like, he hid everything, like, all the animal viscera into jars that he'd hide in his closet, including things like roundworms, tapeworms, caterpillars, snakes, frogs, and lizards, and worms that were bred out of his body. And then he pictures himself commanding legions of hell, and they're all running around killing each other, and he's like, yeah, go, everyone attack! And throwing rocks on each other.
They're eating people's heads and stuff too, and there's
Yeah,
crucified people.
flesh.
There's like birds like ripping out a guy's intestines as he screams. There's a guy ripping some guy's skin off. There's people getting crushed with boulders and just.
And remember, too, this is all drawn like a very simplistic kind of like cartoony style, too.
Yeah.
Where there's not a lot of shading other than just on like the borders of the panels.
It's still really just fucking disgusting the whole time. It's like it really is.
Yeah.
And then he said before he knew it, he memorized his mother's Song of Hell, and he'd enjoy drawing pictures and sing the Song of Hell to himself. And then he was wishing that he could kill people for real. So then it goes to like a scene of like all these bullies that are picking on him because they want money from him. So they beat up Hino. They're saying like, get him, you smartasses, you're right, come back here tomorrow at the money. And he's just like cursing himself. He's like, damn it, die, fall to the bottom of hell.
Yeah, he's repeating his mom's saying now to them.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then he like what's funny is a lot of times he does this too. He draws himself like kind of cross-eyed.
I also like how here he says I hated them so much, too much, as if like this whole time he hasn't hated people, and now he's like I'm brimming.
You
with-
want to keep it under control. Like I can't hate him too much. I gotta hate him at a certain level.
yeah.
Yeah.
So then he draws pictures of them dying while he sings his song, and then, surprise, they died just like the way I imagined. They died for real. It's like a car ran over one, other guy's just dead in a ditch.
And when the car ran over him, it's not like, oh, car ran over him. Like, he got decapitated by his car running over him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, like, his arms are, like, so far apart, like, ripped off. Like,
Yeah.
this truck must have backed over him, like, 5 or 6 times.
Maybe. So then he has, like, all these gravestones, and on, like, he does the normal, like, crucifix plus with twigs, except he impales animals on
I
them.
love that you call it a plus.
Cross.
Oh, plus dead people, that's what it means, right?
Yeah. Plus one
Yeah.
dead guy in heaven. Or hell.
It should be a minus there, shouldn't it be? It should be like every grave should be a minus sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what they're going for. They're trying to do math when they're
Yeah. God realized it too late. He's like, it should have been a minus sign.
Yeah.
You got
That's why all those people are wearing those like math necklaces all the time, you know?
Yeah.
The Addition fan club.
His mom finds all of his jars of stuff, and
All his animals and shit in jars and everything.
I really
Yeah.
wish you guys like listening could see these panels. The mom's face as she sees it is just like this demented, like she has that one bulging eye, the one swollen small eye, her mouth is open, and it zooms in on her face. Then it zooms in on his face with his like one giant pupil cross-eyed.
it's got like a bat nose.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
just-
this page is probably going to be the one that I use as the episode cover on Facebook.
Okay.
Because I always upload the episode covers the weekend after. So check back in a few days and you can see how fucking weird this is.
So the dad ties him up, and he's like, "You need to apologize to your mother," but he doesn't say anything.
I don't get why he ties him up.
Well, it's a different culture. You're allowed to tie up your children.
At a different time.
That's the version of a timeout. Like you actually, it's called a tie out. You know what I mean?
God, Jesus.
Yeah. Good. Great.
I like that one.
Yes.
I give it +1.
I'm gonna minus you later.
I'm gonna crucify him on a big plus.
I'm gonna mine's existence you later. Plug for Daryl's book. Book number 2 for Daryl's book in this episode.
Wait, Daryl's book, like the one we're reading right now? Yeah.
I know, this is the second one. Mine's existence and Lullabies from Hell. The 2 Daryl books you gotta pick up, guys.
This is how like creepy these books are. That these are our idea of funny goofs to make. Like pluses are like crosses, right, guys?
So his dad slaps him.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You need to apologize. What are you doing?" And he's kind of like staring at his own wounds there on his face. And he's like, you have to stay there until you're ready to talk and no dinner. So then he leaves, and then the mother comes over and goes, You're a devil, a scary devil. And she starts ripping out his hair.
She's like smiling.
Yeah, she's laughing.
Yeah,
You're a
she's
scary
beating him
devil.
with a bamboo pole. She's stepping on his head. And the dad comes back and he's like, "Okay, that's enough. Like, what are you doing?" So then he says, like, all of his treasures were thrown to a ditch or burned, like all the animals he had in jar and intestines. And he says, "My mother bullied me when it happened. The maid was sure to be out shopping, and father was away working at the factory, of course."
And this is more than bullying. She like abuses him, like ties him up to the ceiling,
Upside down, yeah.
Yeah, with his mouth like covered as she like.
These are methods that Punisher uses to question his victims. Like, this is not bullying.
Yeah, she's just the Punisher.
Yeah, she Jack Bowers them.
Yeah, basically.
She gets a needle, she stabs it into the palm of his hand.
Ugh.
Oh my god.
She burns his hands with a candle. She rakes across his face with her fingernails that leave scars. He says, "I had fresh wounds every day." And he's saying to himself, "Die, be dead, fall down to the bottom of hell, fall."
And he started wishing for her death every night.
Yep. And a few days later, my mother went missing. But I knew where she was, and then you get this great panel of him running, like, excitedly
I love
and
it.
happily.
It reminds me of like what is that webcomic I'm thinking of? Someone help me out. Just look at that panel.
Give us some clues, maybe, instead of
Yeah, give us something to go off of.
what's a webcomic that exists? Okay, Penny Arcade.
that they have this like facial expression all the time.
Perry Bible Fellowship? No.
Oh, maybe Perry
Oh
Bible
yeah,
Fellowship.
it's definitely PDF.
Yeah. Yep. And he looks like he's just so happy. He's like, yeah. He's running to the sewers. He pulls over the manhole cover. He's still smiling. He's like, yeah.
Yep.
It's the closest comic comes to like a punchline where he looks like he's happy about something. It's, of course, something gross and horrific, like a PBF comic.
Yeah, he hops down and he goes, "Hey, there she is. She's already rotting." And then it's his mother's big decomposing face with a gas-bloated belly that made her belly bulge like a balloon. And he's poking it with a bamboo shoot.
Yeah, she's in the sewer, so all the methane in the sewers made her belly bulge. And
Yeah, he's like, "Heh, serves her right." And then he sings a song to her while her corpse is there.
Every
day.
day. He comes here every day.
420.
Yeah. He 420 fall to the bottom of hells with her every day.
Yeah. And then we cut to him as adults saying how happy he was about that he could hardly sleep at night.
Yeah, and he learned that he could kill anyone just by wishing upon the person he hated.
He says, like, don't you want to, like, wouldn't you do this? Like, he's like, you want to kill one or two? I'm sure there are people you'd want to do. The thing is, I can do
You'd
it.
want to.
That you,
That's everyone, right? Everyone wants to do people, right?
yeah. That you'd want to kill. So, like, now I could do it. And then, like, Darryl was saying, he has
Like, there's a friend that took his money and ran, that he makes, like, all these, like, steel girders drop on him and kill him. There's a rival mangaka.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they make
fucking lightning.
strike with lightning.
Everyone else has these super, like, visceral, violent deaths, and this guy gets hit by lightning and has, like, a charred umbrella like a Bugs Bunny character.
And his toupee falls off.
Yeah.
And then there's an editor that insulted his manga.
He gets thrown by a steamroller.
Oh, my God.
I killed him in the most vicious way.
His eyeballs pop out and roll around.
Yeah, I like that. His head, just his eyeballs popping out.
And they literally write under it, Shonen Magazine.
His brother just gets stabbed. That's really uninspired.
Yeah.
But his dad gets his head stuck between some gears and crushed, which is great.
But you think that brother will have the worse fate than the editor?
The
or
brother didn't do a lot.
Yeah,
to
he was
him.
barely there in the story.
Yeah.
Was he better than the dad?
The dad beat him.
I mean, he still gets stabbed in the gut. Like, that's not a fun way to go.
I already get stabbed in the gut. They run over by a steamroller.
I feel like if I got run over by a steamroller, I'd have to suffer for, like, 8 seconds. Getting stabbed in the gut would be an eternity of hell.
Yeah.
All right, so I need to make me a note for later. Ryan prefers stabbing in the gut. Okay, good to know.
No!
So he says everyone met a miserable end. because of
Everyone
that.
I met, I killed.
I inherited my father's estate. Now I can live doing what I enjoy most, drawing manga. And he's singing the song again. And he says the next person that's going to die. And then on the next panel, he's just pointing at the reader saying, you're dead next. Now that you know my terrible secret, I can't let you live. That's why I warned you not to read this manga. But it's too late. You'll die 3 days.
And then he hammers another big plus on the door.
You'll die 3 days after you read this manga. How
Yeah.
you do is a secret, but you'll die in more heinous ways than any murder I've committed so far. And then he sings the song while he stares, like, really menacingly and maniacally at the reader.
You know how you mentioned, like, in the previous story, how they have framing devices for scary stories, and then it turns out that the framing device actually is a scary story. I like to imagine, like, this podcast is the framing device, and they are presenting the story as a framing device, and it turns out I'm actually the writer, and now you all are going to die too. Fuck you guys.
Daryl just, what was that movie? The Ring?
Yeah, basically.
He's just the ringed
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, that's why it was funny when I was reading it. I'm like, oh, I have to do this.
I
to
mean,
them.
if you guys are listening to this episode, we must have put it up a week or two after we recorded it, so we're alive. So fear not, unless Daryl's the
What
only.
if we found, like, an automated...
Daryl's the only survivor actually
Yeah.
because he wrote
Yeah.
it, so he's gonna put this.
Daryl
out.
actually, after this, he's going to just imitate our voices, so no one will never know the difference.
Yeah, that'll be easy to do. I'm Ryan!
I nailed it! Yeah, you got it, right?
That's the only one I need.
Wait, Ryan, are you here twice in this conversation? I hear you
guys.
twice.
Green Lantern's light, guys!
Fuck you guys.
DC's better than Marvel. You guys have no idea.
All right, so did we like this comic?
I liked it.
I hated it.
You hated it?
You hated it?
I didn't. Yeah, I kind. It's just too much. Not enough story. Too much. Just horrible things happening.
I think the creepy element for me was a lot more here than the Stolen Heart. Like, you're right that it's mostly like just gore, but the fucking art style is so disgusting, and like his creepy faces as he looks at his creepy mom, and then he like wishes like that he's the Prince of Hell and stuff. It's just it's like this is more hellish to me than the other one was by far.
I agree with that. Like, it is more creepy, but it just doesn't work as well as a story to me. Like, it just feels like it's if you took this art style and made a more like actual narrative rather than this guy saying I had a shitty life and I imagine everyone in my life was dead and my manga I can kill people with it, I would like it better. But like, it just seems too much like, man, imagine like I wish I could just cut off lizards and kill my family and all this shit, and it just doesn't connect in the way that's satisfying.
I actually like the first one a little more, but this one I think is more interesting. So like, even though I kind of liked the archetype of the first one, but this one I thought the art was cooler. I thought like the just thematically, I thought it was like I would be more likely to recommend this, even though I personally like the first one more.
Want to know something even more demented?
You wrote this?
No. That's the twist.
You made it finally?
No, I've read 2 other entire issues of his stories where he kills his family. And it's the same thing where his mother's like really demented. I wish I found a story. I wanted to show you guys his grandfather and grandmother, because his grandfather is the actual Yakuza guy. And his grandmother, he always makes a bird woman. She's half bird and she's always laying eggs.
I mean,
it's really weird.
A lot of times art is like an expression of like some kind of latent trauma, or
a lot of times grandparents are bird people, you know.
Yeah. But my beef is that it is true that you have like a fake narrative. I don't know what to say. A fake persona. You have yourself in a story, but you imagine the events around you loosely inspired by what happened in real life. But I've seen this done before with more of a story to fulfill it. It just feels too much like what I wish would happen in real life. I wish my mom was dead and all that shit.
And they do, like, really, you can sum the story up in like one sentence. Guy can kill people by thinking about it, and does.
But I feel like part of his appeal is you're supposed to be in it for kind of the revolting aspect.
Yeah, because they don't try to make anybody likable.
Yeah.
Because his horror, in a way, is kind of, after reading like a lot of it, like Red Snake in the Collection, his horror is kind of supposed to be fun. Like it's real demented, but it's demented in like a lighthearted way where it's
like a black comedy, you would say.
Yeah, it's sort of like how the author is enjoying it, and he's always having fun, and he like tells all the other tales. And there's even some tales like where he gets his mother's pregnant, and when she dies, he finds the half-born fetus in her womb, but like it's still alive, so it like winks at him, and then he keeps it in a jar, and he says like we go on picnics together. Like it's supposed to be real, like gross, but not like real. There's not like suffering kind of the same way that Umezu's story was about suffering.
This is worth bringing up because personal taste always factors into horror and stuff like this. I always view horror as a very personal thing, like humor. You can't say you can't explain why something is scary or funny. It's just something you feel instinctually. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you explain it, you're just going to say, I still don't get it. Like, I have to feel it. And for me, black comedies, I've never been a big fan. That's probably why I wasn't a big fan of Punisher, Deadpool, Kill the Marvel Universe. I probably wasn't a big fan of Archer vs. Predator. I'd rather have to see stuff played straight more than funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's definitely fair.
I also found the end kind of like one of those fucking Facebook posts that's like, now that if you don't share this, the boogeyman will get you.
Yeah, buy my manga for another person or I kill you.
Yeah.
So, what do we got here? The Enigma of Amigara Fault.
By Junji Ito.
Ito.
This was my favorite of the ones we read.
Oh, mine too.
I really liked it. It was unfortunately it was the first one I read too, so the rest I was like, eh. This one actually creeped me out a lot.
This is the one I recommend for the show, and it's the one we all like the most. Coincidence?
I liked the Stolen Heart the most.
Well, Ryan's the one who sucks the most, and
But
he likes that one the most.
I don't want you to think I didn't like this one. Like, this one was still really great.
We'll discuss favorites at the end.
Yeah,
Okay.
I already discussed it. Sorry.
Shit.
So the cover is just a kid in the mountains backpacking and a girl behind him, and then in the background there's like some kind of, it looks like a big piece of rock, like a rock formation with like shadows of almost like human looking bodies, but we can't really tell what it is.
Yeah.
And then we get a narrative of a guy saying, not too long ago there was an earthquake, several towns and villages got destroyed, and following the earthquake there was a large fault discovered near the epicenter of the earthquake, and it's a long fault,
like a ground fault, not like an error or mistake.
Oh yeah, people would get confused about
Guys.
that. There's an error in the world.
And when they say epicenter, it's actually the point directly above the focus of the earthquake.
Yes. And so they say the fault is deep, and they don't mean deep in the sense like this fiction is a deep work. They mean like it's physically like down in the earth.
Several miles long.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's kilometers, Daryl. Fucking imperial.
I was helping out since we were all helping out all our stupid readers that don't know anything.
Yeah.
Listeners. They're not viewers. They're not readers. They're listeners.
We're the stupid people and the twist.
Me can't talk good.
The least shocking twist ever. Turns out we're the idiots.
That's not a twist.
That's the premise of this whole story.
Yeah.
So
You mean this story or the story you're reading?
The story of our lives.
Anyway, this kid is climbing through the mountains, and he
meets a girl.
He's like, "Hey, I'm Awaki. What's your name?" And she's like, "I'm Yoshida." And he's like, "Hey, are you looking for the fault?" I'm looking for that. And she's like, "Yeah, I saw it on TV. I knew I had to come see it." And
he's like, "You're a woman all by yourself." I mean, no offense, a woman hiker all alone.
Oh yeah.
We should also mention the art style compared to the other two. I really love Junji Ito's art style. It's the most realistic out of the three.
Yeah.
They do have anime eyes, but it's more closer to like.
It's not like modern anime high budget production eyes. They look like just more normal human faces with very simplistic features, like a little line for the nose, the line for the mouth. Like the eyes aren't super extravagant; they're just like they're short and narrow.
He also puts a lot more detail into backgrounds, which in the other ones the backgrounds didn't really matter that much, but in this one you have to get the scope of like the mountain they're on because it's like the main part of the whole story. So like I really liked how much more detailed this was.
Yeah. And they're walking through looking for this fault, and like it's a wonder of nature. No wonder the entire country's transfixed on this. And they hear people talking, and they're like, "Oh, it must be the others who've come here." And when they show up, it gives a full page of this giant rock formation, this fault, jutting out of the ground with a crowd in front of it. And this rock formation has human-sized like silhouettes on it.
Like you know cartoons when they run through a door? It looks like a bunch of cartoons just ran through this mountain.
This is the mountain that Wile E. Coyote consistently runs into.
Yeah.
And they say immediately like these are thousands of human-shaped holes found in the fault exposed by the earthquake. So there's a bunch of people here. There's people researching it. There's just visitors, and they're all just staring in front of this like ginormous rock fault that has just human-sized shapes all over it. The holes are like sometimes child-shaped. Sometimes they're,
man, woman, larger,
heavier people.
thinner.
Yeah. And the researchers are examining it, and they're like, they put a 30-meter fiber scope in it, and they can't find the end. Yeah. And they're like, I don't know how deep this goes.
And I want to commend Junji Ito on his work of how well he's able to depict each of the holes. Because it's like, when you think about drawing a hole, you just like draw a person filled in black. But what he does is he does like outlines over and over. If you think about like drawing the outline of a person and drawing the same thing just inside of it over and over until it's smaller, and it's like it's very well done. It's very evocative of like this is clearly a hole.
You can see it getting lighter as it gets towards the entrance and darker as it goes deeper down.
Yeah.
And each one is so unique. Like, they really look like people cast in shadow. Like, that's how... And, like, some of them, like you said, some of them are heavier, some of them are, like, small children. But each one, it doesn't just look like he copy-pasted a bunch of holes.
Yeah, not at all. And, like, the shading, like you said, is really excellent. Mm-hmm. And the researchers start to say it's impossible that this could be natural. Someone must have dug out from the inside, but they don't have no idea how or how you even get in the mountain to do it. So they're like, they must be ancient. What are they for? And then Yoshida, the girl, he sees her. What's the guy's name? Owari.
Yeah.
He sees Yoshida looking around nervously, and he's like, "What's up?" And she basically says, "I saw on TV. I know I saw one of these holes that was my shape."
Yeah.
And she's like, I know it. It was my silhouette. It was based on me. I swear. And he's like, these holes are supposed to be thousands of years old. How could they have based it on you?
And he says, that's kind of egotistical, don't you think? And she's like, I'm not joking. Don't make fun of me. I knew it was me. It doesn't have to make sense. Typical woman, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's like, he's trying to be like, how could that be? And she's like, there's some kind of like, something is telling her that this is her hole.
Yeah, I just know.
She's also saying, like, it doesn't make sense. I just know.
Yeah.
Women's intuition must be. What was that fucking line from the Batman thing? It's like women's something that didn't have to be women's. I don't know.
Sometimes a girl is just a girl, and they have to find their hole.
Oh, God.
Women's curiosity.
Yeah, women's curiosity.
Yeah,
my women's curiosity wouldn't let me rest.
Yeah. And as she's yelling at him about this, another random guy shows up, and he's like, I felt the same way. I'm here to look for my hole.
And he's this, like, gaunt, skinny, kind of eerie-looking guy.
That's one thing I have to point out. Also, the people look very distinctive. It's not like typical anime where people all look...
like I couldn't tell the difference between any of the girls, really, in the first story when they were all sitting around.
Yep. And this guy, he's like, I finally found my hole. This is it. See how perfectly I fit? You don't believe me? Well, I don't blame you. I'll prove it. And he basically takes off his clothes, and just fucking starts sliding into that hole.
Yeah.
It does literally say slip.
It's really like it's creepy to watch because he fits perfectly and he's just like wiggling forward. And
Yeah, if you think about like a child's toy, like with the square shape and the circle shape that you put through, just imagine putting a person shape through.
Just out of context, a guy taking his clothes off and it's like, I'll prove this is my hole right now. And he takes his pants off and just faces them in his underwear. I was like, if this wasn't such a good story, I would be 12 years old and laughing at this the whole time.
You know, this is one of those stories that like the premise sounds really dumb, but I was creeped out just this whole time, like,
because it really gets into. I think it really gets you into the idea of how this would feel in real life too. Because like we said, those toys you slot into it, and sometimes in real life you have a hard time like getting them out. They're so perfectly fit. That's kind of how these people are. Like you can't move their arms and legs as they squeeze and move like snakes through this tunnel as they fit perfectly in.
Also, knowing Phil's performance anxiety, as soon as he sees a hole he knows he has to go in, he just clams up.
Fuck you. I go in. I mean, never mind.
I go in holes perfectly, Ryan. Fuck you.
Do you know how many holes I've been in? More holes than you.
So he says people start freaking out. They're like, "Oh my god, I can't believe he went in. He's not gonna be able to get out." And the researchers start putting the fiber optic camera in. They're like, "There's no trace film at 30 meters."
They try to put their hose into the hole.
Yeah, they do put their hose into the hole, and they can't find anything.
Yeah.
And they basically call in rescue squads that are trying to enter the hole to look for him. They put cameras in. They don't see him at all.
I like that they get this one guy that's 5'2" tall to try and go in. And it's this funny just picture of him trying to like crawl in the hole sideways.
I don't know. Like
Yeah.
when I was growing up, I was the only one who could like fit in like crawl spaces to like fix pipes and stuff. So I understand being like, you're tiny, go in that hole.
But they don't want to like go. They're not trying to like go too deep. They're not trying to like. And also, I don't know if they actually can fit, just because the shape was so perfect for him.
Yeah.
Well, it says later that the rescue squad member had to retreat after going no more than 5 meters in.
Oh, okay. And also, you get Yoshida's face this whole time. She's the one who was like thinking about her hole. She looks like freaked out. She's sweating and shivering. And then we cut to the nighttime, and Owari is sleeping, and he has a nightmare. And in his dream was the guy who went into the hole.
He is him in the dream.
Right,
He is
yes.
Nagakagi.
And he says, in my dream, I was completely trapped in pitch black darkness, hundreds of meters into the hole. And he's just freaking out. He's like, I can't move. I'm stuck. The earthquake, the hole must have been deformed by the earthquake, so I can't move. Someone help. And then he wakes up. And he's like, oh man, it's a good thing it was just a nightmare. And he thinks, like, is he still down there writhing naked in that hole? Maybe he got rescued. And he goes up, and he's like, hey, Yoshida, did you hear anything? And she's like, no, he's still gone. And she's like, she brings him to the spot and says, I have to show you something. And she says, I found it. I found my hole. And she's like, this is it? He's like, it's kind of like you. And she's like, no, this is identical to me. And then her eyes, like, bug out. She's sweating profusely. And she's like, I'm so scared. I'm so scared. This is my tunnel. They dug it for me. And he's like, no, it's just a coincidence. It just happens to look at you. And she's convinced this is my tunnel. It was made for me to enter. It's been waiting for me. All that time it was underground. And when I go in, I'll be trapped in this hole. And it's just a really freaky scene because she's like, she knows she doesn't want to go in, but she like is compelled.
Yeah.
By this.
It's like she's being called to it.
I think that's the most interesting part about this because it's so much in horror. I'm like, why would they do this thing? And this, like, having her admit, like, I understand this makes no sense. I know I shouldn't do it, but, like, I have to.
My favorite type of horror is, like, this kind of reminds me of, like, some weird, like eldritch, esque Japanese manga stuff where it's like this otherworldly, like, calling that you can't resist because, like you were saying, Ryan, in horror, a lot of times I really get taken out of it because I'm like, you know, why would you do
Why
it?
would you go out upstairs?
Yeah.
Why would you go in this maze?
But when there's, like, some kind of, like, thing that we don't understand as humans that is, like, pulling us in, it's like...
Especially like something like this where your curiosity, like, what made this hole for me? What's waiting on the outside for me? Like, why? And it's clear it wants me to go through it. And
Like, how could there have been a hole underground for thousands of years that is made for me?
Yeah, it's great because a lot of horror is based around like an enemy or an antagonist or a villain that you have to somehow defeat or flee from. But here it's just like it's this thing that you're compelled to engage with.
Yeah.
it's just a strange thing in the world that makes no sense.
Like it's a force beyond humans, so it's like you kind of like you can't do anything but succumb to it.
And I
Which,
know
speaking of,
I've talked about on the show how like I don't really like horror very much, but this is the kind of horror that I can get into.
Same.
This is the horror. This is the horror I love, and the best type of horror. The problem with a lot of horror stories, I feel, they feel compelled to have a villain, and also they can feel compelled to have like a set of rules to how to beat him. But the real scary stuff is when you don't even know like what you're dealing with, what's going on really. Like the unknown is what's really scary. And here we never get any answers to what this fault really is or what it's doing here.
Yeah,
That's why I mentioned Lovecraft before, because I was just thinking like in those stories there's like a lot of times it's just like some unknown, like it's always like an unknown presence or whatever.
And also Lovecraftian creatures are always undefeatable in a lot of cases, and like usually all the protagonists usually do is survive or maybe stave off the apocalypse for a few years, something like that.
or they go crazy most of the time.
Yeah.
Like it's like I just like that a lot more. That it's like it's creepy because you don't know anything about it, or you don't know much about it.
Yeah.
So then we cut back to the crowd. They're like, we never found that guy, and another kid climbs up to his hole. He's like, this is my hole. It was made for me. I have to go in.
I have to say this because this is actually a meme online. This is how I actually know about the story. People say this a lot. This is my hole. It was made for me.
And maybe that'd be funny out of context. In the context of the story, I was like freaked out.
I know that's why it's funny because I knew it out of context. I'm like, that's a funny joke. And then I read the comic. I'm like, oh my god, this is scary.
Yeah, and he climbs in and he's like, tell my mom goodbye. And people start going nuts then, and everyone starts going to their holes. Not everyone, like several people do.
Yeah, but it's like now a crowd of people are doing it. Like he said, like not a standard. I don't know, trend. I don't know what the term is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like by doing it, he like was the first one, so everyone started doing it. And now Yoshida's freaking out, screaming, "No, I'm scared. I'm gonna have to enter the hole, and I'm gonna die in there. I'm gonna die inside that hole."
And another thing to mention, like they have a lot of the stories also. Just these two characters interact with each other and talking about the fears of the hole and stuff.
Yeah.
Versus like the other story where you don't get as much character interaction depth as the story.
Yep.
Yeah, they're kind of just typical tales. Like, then this person did this, and then this happened. Whereas this one's more about the struggle of the impulse to enter. The hole.
And she keeps going on like it's telling me, come into me. That's what it's saying. It wants me to go in. And Owari, to try and to help her, he fills up her hole with.
Oh yeah, he does. I'll make you not want to go into that hole. I'll fill you up, right?
I'll fill this hole up. Just watch me.
He fills up her silhouette gap, and
with rocks, right? He gets his rocks off and fills up her hole.
And he says, "You're safe now." And he says, "You don't have to go back to your tent. Stay with me. I'm here with you." And we have some character exposition here where she's like, "I've always been alone my whole life," and he's like, "You're afraid of that hole because you've been lonely. Nothing's lonelier than being inside there. So just stay with me."
I do hate the fact that we have to keep saying hole all the time. It's kind of tough.
When I was reading it in context, I didn't laugh at it, which says enough because like it's me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't laugh at I
It's just when Phil says it, it's funny.
Yeah, out of context, it definitely is funny talking about going into holes. But, then they kiss or whatever, and then it cuts to nighttime. And that night he has another nightmare. It was a long time ago. He doesn't know how long ago. He committed a horrible crime and was about to be punished.
Everyone's in like loincloths and with spears.
I love that he still has his Beatles haircut as he's like a caveman.
Yeah.
And along the cliff wall are holes for criminals executed in the past. When a person committed a crime of my magnitude, the people in the past would dig human-shaped holes, and they put people in there. And as he starts going into it, he feels the cold stone close in around him, and he has no choice but to move forward. The walls were carved in a way that kept you from retreating. You're just sliding slowly down, moving forward with each movement you made. And with time, I felt a tug on my neck. To my horror, the part corresponding to my neck only got longer and longer, stretching until it should have torn off. And now we see the neck piece of, like, the neck part of the rock starting to, like, basically...
The whole thing just becomes elongated.
So the hole is changing shape to, like, deform his body.
And he says, not just my neck, my legs, my arms, my torso, this hole starts to, like, really go in different directions over time, so that very, very, very gradually it starts to stretch his arms into, like, noodle shapes, and his body starts to contort, and he's screaming for help in there. And then he wakes up.
And the girl's gone.
The girl's gone. He goes, no. He runs after her. She dug the rocks out of the hole and went in. And he starts crying, basically, why'd she do it? And then when he drops his flashlight,
He sees his hole.
he sees his hole.
Yeah, the flashlight lands on the ground and shines on his hole.
And he knows. He knows right away, this
Yeah.
is my hole.
Because it's got the hole has the Beatles haircut too.
Yeah.
And then he looks with like kind of like these dead
Yeah.
eyes.
That's one thing I find. That's one thing I find funny is they have. I guess just to clarify who it is to make it more like, exact. But they always have the hair silhouette. When if you're really going through a rock face, your hair will probably get smushed.
Yeah.
Person, you know what I mean?
No, but it also stretches out your hair. That's where long hair comes from.
Oh yeah.
And then like I love that panel where he has these like dead, like defeated eyes, and then you see a shot of his feet with his clothes next to it, and then you see a shot of his upper torso going into the hole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we cut to months later, and on the other side of the mountain, there's another fault, and that was also formed by the earthquake. And they said, but unlike the one on the other side, this one's quite small. There are holes, but they're not human shaped. They don't really have any form, and they're just these like I don't even know how to describe this.
They look like roots, like root designs.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like they do look a lot like roots or like snakes, like a multi-headed snake just like coming out of one direction. And they're like, I wonder if they're connected to the ones over there. I'm gonna take a look. And one of the researchers shines his light into this hole, and he sees.
It's hard to explain. It's just a person stretched to the point of not looking like a person anymore, basically.
Like
Yeah.
you can see like their completely white, tiny bead-like eyes, and their mouth is like half their body now, and you can't even like see the rest of them. They're like super stretched out.
Yeah.
And the way that it's drawn so like dimly lit and the shading so dark on the character, it really does look like this incomprehensible monster, except that you can see like just bones and curls in the flesh.
It reminds me of, you remember those books that we, like, I don't know if you guys had them as kids?
Yeah, the scary story
Scary
ones.
stories to read in the dark or whatever. And they had
Yeah.
those super creepy drawings that were like hyper detailed. That's what this is.
That's always the most uncomfortable scary things for me. Like whenever people have like even like when they have something like Homer Simpson and make him look hyper realistic, it's always creepy. When you have something that looks cartoonish, but you make it real enough that it just really makes it unsettling, like that uncanny valley that sometimes like studios inadvertently do when they try to make fun, lovable characters, but they make it too realistic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it ends like that, where the guy starts screaming, saying it's slowly coming this way.
Yeah, and that's the end of the Enigma of Amigara Fault.
I liked it a lot.
So, recap page, you guys changed my mind. I think the third one's the best.
Yeah. Yes.
It's
Yeah,
so good.
I feel like it's hard to argue any other way. That's definitely one of the best horror stories.
Here's the reason why I think, like we all said, like this is what we love about horror. Where this is a more modern story, and I think more modern stuff you get a lot more. When something new and different comes along, it feels more fresh and exciting for us. Whereas the first two are more stuff you've seen before, like they're more like classic horror stories.
Yeah, it's like the first just standard kind of ghost story stuff, while the second's just more like it's supposed to gross you out, and that's why it's scary. Whereas like this is the unknowable.
This is a fear you didn't know you have, the fear of like going into this rock and like
Of being I like this is actually like a really creepy idea, like that you're compelled to kill yourself. Like they know that they're probably going to die in the hole, but they're like
No, they say, like, I'm definitely going to die in this hole.
But they're like, they have to go because it's made for them. Like,
Yeah. And it's built in a way that once you go in, you can't back out. So it's like when you get your head stuck in a banister.
yeah.
Well, that's a really real fear. Where sometimes where you get something, your head stuck at something, and like no one's around, and you're just like, oh my god, how long am I going to be here? That's a very very scary, especially like claustrophobia and stuff like that.
I'm sure when I was like 5, I got stuck in a fence and was like, I'm going to die here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This hole was made for me. Yeah, a lot of Ito's. I've read like I think like 8 or 9 of his other stories, and a lot of his stuff is based on kind of like weird premises. There's one that I read that I almost wanted to choose for the thing, even though this one's still the best. It's where one guy returns from South America with this honey, and it's like it's the best honey you ever taste. It makes all of their food.
I thought you meant like a girl.
This honey,
no.
this baby honey.
No, this literal jar of honey. It makes all of their food taste bad, and as he's eating it, he tells like the other guy he's sharing it with, it's like, you just can't get caught eating it. That's like the only rule, and it's like, I'm trying to figure out what that's supposed to mean. And then one day he brings other people over to the house to see him, that guy, and eat the honey because it's so good. And when they go in the house, they have this full page thing of this guy flat as a pancake exploded against the wall with his guts everywhere.
Ugh.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just like it's all like this really weird what's going on? What are you supposed to do? Kind of horror that Ito's really good at.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this story.
Some of it gets really weird, but I think that's a problem like with a lot of Japanese authors. Is that some of them just get so strange, but not like strange in like a scary way. It's just like strange, like why are you?
Well, like if you read like Stephen King or a lot of people like writers, people who draw horror regularly for a long period of time, eventually they get into weird territory. And I think Japan, weird territory is kind of like more of the norm.
Yeah, it's like after you make a stealth game once or twice, like how do you not just make everyone nanomachine mechs that are ninjas? And,
exactly.
Like how can you not be your own clone's brother? Like it's just,
that's something I love about Japan is like sometimes in America we're doing it less and less. Like now, when there's a sequel, it's more like how do I mix this up and make it different? While Japan always had a mentality like I can't be tried the same ground. And
so we figured out who the other weeaboo was, by the way.
That's part of the reason why I love a lot of the stories that come over there. There's always at least like an interesting idea embedded deep within, like an interesting seed that gives birth to a really strange tree.
Yeah.
So we know the favorite of everyone. What's everyone's least favorite? I said mine.
I guess the middle one. But, I really liked all three, and I would gladly read more from all three of the creators.
Yeah, I'd say Hino just because it's not what I like.
I didn't like Stolen Heart, and actually the only one I was happy to like, the only one I would read more of this and I liked it a lot was Amigara Fault. The other two, even though I enjoyed Hino a little,
Hino's the only one that I would say because we have the question: do you regret reading this? Hino's the only one that I say I might regret reading it out of the three.
I would not read more of either of the first two.
For me, I like all three, but it's
Same.
just because they're different enough and they're kind of like interesting in their own way.
I am glad we picked three completely different styles.
But I also read a lot of all three, so I can't say that I regret.
You know,
any of them.
if I liked horror more, maybe I would be more into it. It's like it's already a genre I'm not super into, so it has to, I guess, to be like really good for me to really get into it.
See, I'm kind of the opposite, where I'm like, I don't know like any horror, so even like Stolen Heart was kind of, with tropes, I was like, I still like this, like, because I haven't had it beaten to death.
That's why I insist you read more horror stuff, Ryan.
I know, and fuck you.
Okay. So, do we have?
I have a letter. Well, we have a letter from.
Only for Ryan. So now we all leave. Ryan will answer this.
It might be a Dear Ryan.
We got it a long time ago, but I've been saving it for an episode that I felt was appropriate.
It's actually a lot about like what's the cure for this poison? I'm dying. Help me! And now it's too late.
It's
That's the best way to figure out any medical illnesses, guys. Write in to divisiveissues@gmail.com, and in a few weeks we'll probably diagnose you if you need.
Yeah.
So this is from our Facebook page, and it's from Tracy. Thank you, Tracy. The question is, how graphic do you feel is too graphic? You guys discussed this a bit when it comes to the boys, and in the new episode, I don't remember what episode she's talking about, but I'm curious if you feel differently when it comes to on-screen portrayals. I read once someone saying it's difficult to view the Avengers and the Netflix Daredevil existing in the same universe when you compare the bloodless, cartoony violence of Avengers to the realistic bloodshed of Daredevil. Is there anything any of you have felt has gone too far in terms of gore, or are there times you feel excessive gore serves a story?
I actually do think there's such thing as too much gore, just like there's such thing as too much of anything, where you just becoming gratuitous and just self-serving. I think if you use gore to fulfill the story and to set a mood, it's fine. This is a good example of I felt the Hino story is a bit gratuitous, where it didn't feel like it was a strong enough story. It just felt like it was just how awful can we do things here. Like,
I agree.
One of my favorite movies is The Thing, which is a gory movie, but it's about an alien that can morph into anything. So the gore is necessary. It makes it more unnerving, seeing human forms molded and twisted into the grotesque shapes.
I definitely agree, and I think gore as a like tool is good. Where, like you mentioned, like in some horror movies, or in even like I'm trying to think of a movie like Battle Royale. It's supposed to be a fucked up situation where teenagers are murdering each other. So the fact that you see them murdering each other in a gory ways is part of the whole like theme and setting. But if something like The Boys, it's like, let's go fight superheroes, and then you just see like just fucking nasty shit, like blood speckled semen, like
some stuff that's not even related to the main theme. Like you see dogs raping other dogs, and like a guy jerking off to a paraplegic athletes and
like
stuff.
Why? Like it's so unnecessary and not related. Like John Wick, I've heard people say was too gory for them, like or too violent.
Oh,
like
it's so good.
I watched that with my dad, and he was like, "That was way too much." But that's like the movie is about.
Sounds like your dad's a pussy.
It's like that movie is about like over the top hitmen, like.
I think
everyone.
I think it's all about tone, because I want to take two comic examples. Like Nemesis, which we've talked about, isn't as gory as a book like The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead is way more gory, but I was more uncomfortable with Nemesis because I felt like it was there just to be gratuitous and there. Yeah. Whereas The Walking Dead, it fits with the tone. And it works.
And it doesn't have anything like wombs being rigged to explode. And
yeah, and like in Nemesis, it's just like, hey, let's put like a kid in the way of this bullet or whatever, or like in the way of this truck. And like, or like in The Boys, when people would like explode, it seems like it's just there to be there. Where in The Walking Dead, it's supposed to give you a sense of how fucked up this world is, and like it works for the tone.
Yeah, for me, it has to make sense with the universe itself.
Yeah,
like the universe has to feel like this is a natural thing to expect. Like her examples of Avengers and Daredevil, it's like Daredevil's world is built around that kind of the street level violence and the hand to hand combat stuff, whereas Avengers is so much like grander, and it's about like the team working together and fighting against other forces, that it doesn't feel like if Avengers just had a scene of like Captain America getting his face like punched in and bruised and mangled beyond belief, it's like that would probably be too much.
And also like the theme of Daredevil is what is too much in the like for justice, and like where's the gray area, when do you cross the line, whereas the theme of Avengers is let's have a bunch of fun heroes team up and fight aliens.
It's also easy to market, like people love to market like fighting aliens towards younger kids more, because a lot of parents are like, I don't want to have my kids see like war violence, but fighting aliens is like, it's fun. No one would explode and die.
And most blockbusters are aimed towards an all ages audience.
Yes.
While more TV audiences are a lot of older people.
Yep, I've seen people who are like, I won't let my kids play like Call of Duty, but Halo's okay because when you kill aliens, like you don't see like, it's not like it's dehumanizing because they're not humans.
They don't even feel pain. They don't feel anything.
Well, I mean, I know intellectually it's stupid, but it's kind of like a gut feeling,
Yeah, I think that the target audience definitely matters too. Like you guys said, like if it's for kids, you can't have fucking torture stuff. Like that's dumb. Okay, so thank you, Tracy. Any other questions? Feel free to write us, divisiveissues@gmail.com, or on our Facebook page, or tweet at us at divisiveissues. And speaking of Twitter, at the time of recording, it's been a couple weeks by the time you hear this, but I assume I'm going to keep doing this for a while. I have been reading lots and lots of 30s and 40s comics and tweeting really out of context ridiculous panels, or some panels that are great. So you should follow the hashtag Golden Age Shenanigans if you want to get in on this, because I'm having a great time. And I also want to plug the other shows on the Comrade Radio Network. At the time of recording, it'll probably be done by now, but APOC Radio has been doing not really a crossover, but like a series of guest spots with Owen from Classic Schmastic, and I especially recommend the DC Comics episode because I am a one-note person who only thinks about comic books all day. And so far, they've done a couple episodes. They just did one on tie-in stuff that kind of fits in with our brand of like, how does pop culture bleed into this kind of stuff? So I definitely recommend APOC Radio. And all the other shows. You can find them all at Comrade.
Only Big Cap Radio. I'll fuck up.
You can find them all at ComradeRadio.com. And I guess that takes us to recommendations.
Phil, do you have one?
I was going to recommend the anime based on the visual novel Higurashi no Nakokoro ni, or what do they call? I think it's translated as When They Cry. Mm-hmm. Higurashi When They Cry, I think.
Yep.
It's a horror. I haven't played the visual novel. I only watched the anime, but I'm a scrub. But it's really...
You're an alien fighting Muhammad Ali, Phil?
Yeah. Good reference. It's a really creepy show, and I really can't tell you too much without kind of...
You always say this. You can never say anything about a plot. You couldn't even tell me science gives about anything besides, it's about time travel. Give us something.
It's best if you go in completely blind.
But give us something to whet our appetite, some of the taste of what to expect.
Get Sly wet. Come on.
Yeah.
It's a show about a bunch of kids in a little village in Japan where creepy shit happens, and it goes from 0 to 100 in like 2 episodes. So like if you watch the first episode, you're gonna be like, "What is this slice of life anime stuff?" And then it gets really horror-esque very fast with like things happening. And
I think that sounds pretty good. What about you, Sly?
My recommendation is going to be Death Note, which is
It's been recommended like 3 times already.
it's so good. It's so good.
But it's perfectly logical here because
I know. And I'm gonna recommend The Wire.
I'm gonna recommend Death Note.
I'm gonna recommend PBS's Eyes on the Prize.
If you want me to recommend something else, I can. You want me to do
No,
it?
it's fine.
Death Note, it fits with this.
Because Death Note's example of this with a story, like the Hino concept of a story attached to it. I think it's better.
Cool.
It is better. You don't just think.
What about you, Daryl?
I got 2. The first is I wasn't gonna but this is such an obvious recommendation, is Junji Ito's Uzumaki, where if you like the idea of like an otherworldly force pretty much destroying a civilization, that's all about spirals. And it sounds weird. It's like, what does spirals have to do? But like, just imagine someone's like, "Hey, look at my arm!" Like it's slowly bending in on itself, and it keeps happening. Like I'm just more me bending into a spiral. It's like that kind of weird stuff, but to an entire village in different ways for everybody.
Are there anti-spirals?
No, unfortunately.
A good follow-up to that is watching Gurren Lagann.
Yeah.
And then the other recommendation that I really
Why does he
like
get 2?
is
Yeah, only one per customer. Fuck you.
I get.
Okay, he has it ready. We'll make an exception this time.
Okay, I was recommending the Spiral just because you guys really like the Ito story.
Oh, you're recommending that just to us?
Yeah. Fuck you guys listening.
That's only for us. You can't read it. Only us can read it.
My other recommendation was going to be Saya no Uda, which is a visual novel, and it is one of the most like gnarly visual novels I've read. It's pretty crazy. It's about a guy that he undergoes an operation, and when he comes out of it, he sees everything as monstrous flesh and organs and guts, and it makes him so nauseous and sick he wants to kill himself. And in this world of like where everything, like even the walls, are flesh creatures, he meets a little girl, and it's a very Lovecraftian tale, and it's really messed up.
I heard about it. I don't know if from you or not, but I heard that was good.
Yeah, it's really good, but you have to have a stomach for rape.
You have to be an Elmore fan.
Yeah.
So I don't really know a whole lot of horror, so I had to kind of dig deep. I am going to recommend Jamie Delano's Animal Man run. I like the I like the entire Vertigo Animal Man stuff, and I could rave about the Grant Morrison run forever, but the Delano run has a lot of horror elements, and it's very much similar to Swamp Thing, where Swamp Thing's all about the green. Jamie Delano's run's all about the red and like living beings, and it gets really creepy at times, but it also keeps like the heart of the family true, and they just recently collected the rest of it a couple years ago, so I recommend Delano's run. It's collected as Animal Man Volume 6 and 7. You could just skip to that if you want.
Was that the new 52 one?
No, that's Lemire's run, which is also great.
Okay.
Okay.
Because that was also really good.
Yeah, that is also really good horror stuff. Cool. So, thank you guys for listening to Divisive Issues. I've been the perfectly shaped hole.
I've been the plus sign.
I forgot we were doing this.
It's always a fun improv game.
I've been a lullaby from hell.
Okay.
Yep, and I've been Hideshi Hino.
Stay in continuity.